Captain Zek'thul of the Hegemony vessel Shadowclaw thought he had seen everything in his 300 cycles of service. Pirates, smugglers, rebels, even occasional rogue AI. But he had never seen a Deathworlder up close. And by the void, he was about to get one. "Sir, we have visual confirmation on the human vessel," reported his tactical officer, a nervous Vrex named Kilp. "Single occupant, as intel suggested. The target appears to be sleeping." Zek'thul's 4 eyes glowed with anticipation. Humans were legendary throughout the galaxy. Stories of their impossible endurance, their terrifying adaptability, their complete lack of self-preservation instincts. The Hegemony Council had been trying to acquire a live specimen for decades. And here was one, just floating in space, completely defenseless. "Perfect," Zek'thul hissed through his translator. "Initiate capture protocol. Use the gravity tethers. I want this human alive and intact." The sleeping human's name was Jake Morrison, though he preferred to be called Mack. He was a freight hauler, running supplies between the outer colonies and the core worlds. Right now, he was supposed to be enjoying a peaceful nap in his cargo hold while his ship's autopilot handled the boring part of hyperspace travel. He woke up to the sound of his hull being torn open like a tin can. What the actual hell? Mack bolted upright, his coffee mug floating away in the suddenly chaotic gravity. Red warning lights bathed his small cabin in hellish light. His ship groaned and creaked as something massive grabbed it from outside. Through his porthole, he saw the sleek, predatory lines of an alien warship. Its hull was midnight black, covered in sensor arrays and weapon ports, and it was currently ripping his ship apart with mechanical precision. Warning: hull breach detected. Atmosphere venting. Recommend immediate evacuation. His ship's AI announced in its maddeningly calm voice. Evacuation to where exactly? Mack snapped, grabbing his emergency kit. We're in the middle of nowhere. That's when the boarding party arrived. The creatures that poured through his airlock were unlike anything he'd seen in the databases. They moved on 6 legs, their bodies covered in chitinous armor that gleamed like oil. Their faces were dominated by clusters of eyes that tracked his every movement, and they were carrying weapons that hummed with lethal energy. Human specimen, the lead creature spoke through a translator device. "You will come with us. Resistance is futile." Mack looked at the dozen heavily armed aliens surrounding him. He looked at his emergency kit, which contained exactly 1 flare gun and a chocolate bar. He looked back at the aliens. "You know what?" he said conversationally. "I think I'm going to resist anyway." The aliens exchanged what might have been confused glances. This was not how their intelligence briefings had suggested this would go. Humans were supposed to be cooperative when faced with overwhelming odds. "Human," the leader repeated, its voice taking on a warning tone. "You are outnumbered 12 to 1. Your vessel is disabled. Your weapons are primitive. Logic dictates surrender." Mack grinned, and there was something in that expression that made several of the aliens take an involuntary step back. "Oh, buddy, you clearly don't know much about humans." The fight that followed would later be described in Hegemony military reports as unprecedented, impossible, and requiring immediate psychological evaluation of all witnesses. Mack grabbed a wrench from his toolkit and threw it at the nearest alien. The creature tried to dodge, but humans were apparently much faster than their intelligence had suggested. The wrench caught it square in a cluster of eyes. It went down with a shriek that sounded like grinding metal. "One down," Mack announced cheerfully, diving behind a cargo container as energy beams sizzled through the air where he'd been standing. 11 to go. The aliens had expected a brief, professional extraction. They had not expected to be engaged in urban warfare inside a human cargo ship. Every shadow could hide their target. Every piece of equipment could become a weapon in human hands. The humans seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from unexpected angles, using the ship's own systems against them. "How is he moving so fast?" One of the aliens hissed into his comm unit. "The gravity in here should be crushing him." "Humans evolved on a death world," another replied, ducking as a shower of sparks erupted from a control panel that had somehow been weaponized. "Earth gravity is twice what we're used to." To him, "we're moving in slow motion." Mack, meanwhile, was having the time of his life. He'd always been good in a crisis, and this was definitely a crisis. He'd already disabled 3 more aliens using nothing but maintenance tools and what his old drill sergeant would have called aggressive improvisation. "You know," he called out, rewiring a power coupling to create an improvised stunner, "I was having such a nice nap. I was dreaming about home, about my girlfriend's cooking, about sitting on my porch with a beer, watching the sunset." An energy beam missed his head by inches, leaving a molten scar on the bulkhead behind him. "And then you guys showed up," he continued, his voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow made it more terrifying. "You tore apart my ship. You ruined my coffee. You interrupted my dreams." He popped up from behind cover, his improvised stunner crackling with electricity. 2 more aliens went down, their nervous systems overloaded by the crude but effective weapon. "That," Mack said, grinning like a maniac, "was a mistake." Captain Zek'thul watched the boarding operation through his command ship sensors, his confidence evaporating with each passing moment. His elite boarding team, veterans of 100 successful operations, was being systematically dismantled by a single human armed with spare parts and attitude. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking, "we've lost 6 of the boarding party. The human has somehow turned the cargo ship into a fortress. He's using the life support systems to create toxic gas clouds. He's rerouted power to create electrical traps. He's even reprogrammed the ship's AI to play loud music that's disrupting our soldiers' concentration." Indeed, the sound of what humans apparently called heavy metal were blasting to the comm channels, a cacophony of drums and guitars that seemed designed to drive sentient beings insane. "How?" Zek'thul demanded. "How is one primitive human defeating my best soldiers?" "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "I don't think humans are as primitive as we thought." Back in the cargo ship, Mack was down to his last 3 opponents. His improvised weapons were running out of power, and he was pretty sure he'd pulled something in his shoulder during the last fight, but he was still grinning. "You know what the funny thing is?" he said, casually dodging another energy beam. "I'm actually a pretty peaceful guy. I deliver supplies to colonies. I help people. I don't usually go around beating up aliens with wrenches." The remaining boarding party members were backing toward the airlock, their weapons shaking in their grips. They'd lost 9 of their comrades to this insane human, 9 highly trained soldiers, defeated by a freight hauler with a toolbox. "But you see," Mack continued, advancing on them step by step, "you made this personal. You attacked my ship. You threatened my life. You tried to kidnap me without even asking nicely." He held up his flare gun, the only real weapon he'd had from the start. "And that really ticks me off." The flare caught the lead alien center mass, and its armor couldn't protect it from the chemical fire that erupted across its carapace. The creature screamed and stumbled backward, right into its 2 remaining companions. "Retreat!" One of them shouted into his comm. "Retreat! The human is insane." But as they reached the airlock, they found their path blocked. Mack had somehow gotten there first, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed. Behind him, the airlock door was sealed shut. "Going somewhere?" he asked pleasantly. The 2 remaining aliens looked at each other, then back at the human. One of them raised his weapon. "I wouldn't," Mack said, his voice still conversational. "You see, I've been working on ships for 20 years. I know exactly how to disable life support systems. And I know exactly how long various alien species can survive in a vacuum." He gestured to the airlock controls. "Your choice, gentlemen. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the fun way. But either way, you're going to answer some questions." On the bridge of the Shadowclaw, Captain Zek'thul stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His entire boarding party was gone. Not dead, the biosensors indicated, but unconscious or incapacitated. And the human was still moving around inside the cargo ship, apparently making repairs. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." "Put it through," Zek'thul said wearily. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human male with brown hair and tired eyes. He was sitting in what appeared to be a captain's chair, though the bridge around him was clearly improvised from cargo containers and spare parts. "Hello there," the human said cheerfully. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison, though my friends call me Mack. I believe you have something of mine." "Your ship is disabled," Zek'thul replied. "Your weapons are primitive. You have no hope of escape. Surrender now, and we will treat you with the respect due to a worthy opponent." Mack laughed, a sound that sent chills down Zek'thul's spine. "Oh, buddy, you really don't get it, do you? You attacked me. You tried to kidnap me. You ruined my coffee and interrupted my nap." The human leaned forward, and his eyes held a promise of violence that made Zek'thul's blood run cold. "I'm not trying to escape," Mack said quietly. "I'm trying to decide whether to blow up your ship or just cripple it and leave you floating here for the authorities to find." Zek'thul's tactical officer was frantically checking sensors. "Sir, he's done something to our power grid. The human ship is somehow drawing energy from our systems. If he continues, he could overload our reactors." "Impossible," Zek'thul breathed. "How could a primitive human understand our technology?" On the screen, Mack held up a tablet displaying technical schematics. "You know, you guys really need better encryption. It took me all of 10 minutes to hack your databases. Fascinating stuff. Your energy distribution systems are actually pretty similar to what we use on Earth, just more efficient." He tapped the tablet, and alarms began blaring throughout the Shadow Claw. "The thing is," Mack continued, "humans are really good at breaking things. It's kind of our specialty. We've been breaking things for thousands of years. Tools, weapons, governments, the laws of physics. And now I'm going to break your ship." The lights on the bridge flickered as power fluctuations cascaded through the Shadow Claw systems. Engineering reports flooded in, all of them describing impossible failures and system malfunctions. "Stop," Zek'thul commanded. "What do you want?" "Now, that's a better question," Mack said, leaning back in his improvised command chair. "First, I want my ship repaired. Second, I want compensation for my lost cargo and emotional distress. Third, I want a formal apology from your government for this unprovoked attack. And fourth," Zek'thul asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Mack's grin turned predatory. "Fourth, I want you to send a message to every ship in your fleet. Tell them that humans are not to be trifled with. Tell them that Earth is under protection of beings who turn wrenches into weapons and cargo ships into fortresses." The human stood up, and somehow, despite being on a different ship, his presence seemed to fill the bridge of the Shadow Claw. "Tell them," Mack said, his voice carrying the weight of an entire species behind it, "that if they want to talk to humans, they ask nicely, because the alternative is going to be very, very unpleasant." The transmission cut off, leaving Captain Zek'thul staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew worked frantically to restore power to their ship, but the damage was done. The human had made his point, and across the galaxy, word began to spread about the freight hauler who had single-handedly defeated a Hegemony boarding party with nothing but tools and determination. The legend of Mack Morrison had begun. The reckoning. 3 days after the incident, Mack Morrison was sitting in his newly repaired ship, sipping coffee and reading messages from across the galaxy. The Hegemony had been very efficient in their repairs. He had to admit, his cargo hold was better than new, and they'd even upgraded his navigation systems as part of their emotional distress compensation. "Jake Morrison," he said aloud, testing how his name sounded with his full first name. "No, still sounds weird. Mack it is." His communication array chimed with an incoming priority message. The sender ID made him nearly choke on his coffee. "Admiral Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Command." He opened the message, expecting the usual bureaucratic nonsense. Instead, he found a video message from a stern-looking woman in a crisp military uniform. Mack made his way through the crowd, noting the way various aliens stepped back as he passed. Some looked fearful, others seemed awed, and a few were holding what appeared to be recording devices. "Admiral," he said, snapping off a casual salute. "You wanted to see me?" "Inside. Now!" Chin gestured toward a heavily guarded entrance. "We've got a situation." The briefing room was packed with officials from a dozen different departments. Intelligence, military affairs, xenological relations, even someone from the Department of Interstellar Tourism. They all turned to stare as Mack entered. Sit, Chin commanded, pointing to a chair at the head of the table. We need to talk. Mack sat, feeling distinctly uncomfortable. Look, if this is about the Hegemony ship, they started it. I was just defending myself. Oh, we know, said a woman from intelligence. We've reviewed the sensor logs. What we need to understand is how you managed to do what you did. She activated a holographic display showing the Shadowclaw. This is a Hegemony heavy cruiser. It carries a crew of 300, has enough firepower to level a small city, and has never been defeated in combat until 3 days ago. The display zoomed in on Mack's cargo ship, docked to the cruiser's side. You, with nothing but standard maintenance tools and a questionable understanding of alien technology, managed to disable their entire boarding party and take control of their primary systems. It wasn't that hard, Mack protested. Their security was terrible. I mean, who uses the same encryption key for their weapon systems and their cafeteria menu? The room fell silent. Finally, Admiral Chin spoke. Morrison, do you have any idea what you've done? Fix their encryption? Mack suggested hopefully. You've terrified half the galaxy, Chin said. The Hegemony is demanding reparations for the psychological trauma you inflicted on their crew. The Vrex Empire has officially classified all humans as weapons of mass destruction, and the Galactic Council is debating whether to quarantine the entire Sol system. Mack frowned. That seems like an overreaction. Is it? The intelligence officer activated another display. Since news of your encounter spread, we've had 43 separate requests for diplomatic meetings, 15 marriage proposals, and 1 formal challenge to single combat from something called a warrior poet of the Crimson Nebula. I'm not really looking to date right now, Mack said, and I have no idea what a warrior poet is. The point is, Chin continued, you've changed everything. For the past 50 years, humanity has been seen as a minor species on the galactic stage, useful for manual labor, decent at engineering, but nothing special. Now, suddenly, we're the species that can turn a freight hauler into a superweapon. I didn't turn it into a superweapon, Mack objected. I just improvised. You improvised a tactical victory against overwhelming odds using nothing but scrap metal and attitude, said the military affairs representative. Do you understand how terrifying that is to a species that plans their battles 3 centuries in advance? The door to the briefing room opened, and a new figure entered. Tall, elegant, with silver skin and eyes like starlight, the alien moved with fluid grace. When it spoke, its voice was like music. Excuse me, it said, but I am Ambassador Lyra of the Syndicate of Enlightened Worlds. I have been sent to speak with the human known as Mack Morrison. All eyes turned to Mack, who suddenly felt like a specimen in a lab. That's me, he said reluctantly. I have come to offer you a position, Lyra continued, as a strategic advisor to the Syndicate. Your unique approach to problem-solving could be invaluable to our military. Thanks, but I'm happy hauling freight, Mack replied. We would pay you the equivalent of 10 million Earth credits annually. I'm very happy hauling freight, Mack said firmly. Before Lyra could respond, the door opened again. This time, a massive creature entered, its body covered in scales that shifted color with each movement. When it spoke, the translator struggled to keep up with its complex vocalizations. I am War Commander Thask of the Crimson Nebula, it announced. I have come to challenge the human Morrison to honorable combat. Absolutely not, Admiral Chin said immediately. The challenge cannot be refused, Thask replied. The human has demonstrated prowess in battle. Honor demands satisfaction. Look, Mack said, standing up, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not really the challenging to combat type. I'm more of a fix things with tools type. You defeated 12 Hegemony warriors with tools, Thask pointed out. This proves you are a worthy opponent. I defeated them because they were trying to kidnap me, Mack protested. That's completely different from formal combat. Is it? Thask's scales shifted to a deep red. You showed no mercy. You used cunning and strength to overcome superior numbers. You demonstrated the warrior's heart. I demonstrated the freight hauler's heart, Mack corrected, which is mostly just wanting to be left alone to do my job. The room erupted in crosstalk as various officials tried to manage the situation. Ambassador Lyra was discussing trade agreements with someone from Economic Affairs. War Commander Thask was explaining the finer points of ritual combat to increasingly horrified military officials. And Admiral Chun was shouting into her communicator, trying to coordinate with Earth Defense Command. Through it all, Mack sat quietly, sipping the coffee someone had thoughtfully provided. He'd been through worse meetings, though admittedly, they'd usually involved union negotiations rather than interstellar diplomacy. "Excuse me," he said loudly, and the room fell silent. "Can I make a suggestion?" "Of course," Admiral Chin said, looking grateful for any intervention. "Instead of arguing about challenges and job offers and marriage proposals, why don't we just ask what everyone actually wants?" He looked around the room at the assembled aliens and humans. "Ambassador Lyra, what do you really want from me?" "We want to understand how humans think," Lyra replied. "Your approach to problem solving is unlike anything we've encountered. You see solutions where others see only obstacles." "And War Commander Thask, what do you want?" "I want to test my skills against a worthy opponent," Thask said. "But more than that, I want to understand how you achieve victory through unconventional means." "See," Mack said, turning to Admiral Chun. "They don't really want to hire me or fight me. They want to understand how humans work. So what do you suggest?" Chun asked. "Simple," Mack said. "We start a cultural exchange program. Send human engineers to work with alien technical teams. Let alien warriors train with human soldiers. Share knowledge instead of hoarding it." "That's actually not a terrible idea," the intelligence officer admitted. "It's a great idea," Mack said, "but I'm not the guy to run it. I'm a freight hauler. I fix things and deliver cargo. That's what I'm good at. But you're also the human who single-handedly defeated a hegemony boarding party," Lyra pointed out. "You have become a symbol of human capability." "Then let me symbolize the right things," Mack said. "Let me show that humans are good at solving problems, not just fighting. Let me demonstrate that we prefer cooperation to conflict." He stood up and walked to the center of the room. "War Commander Thask, I'll accept your challenge, but not to combat. I challenge you to a problem-solving contest. We'll each be given a broken machine and asked to fix it. Whoever does it faster wins." Thask's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. "This is acceptable. Yes, I believe this would be a worthy test of different approaches." "And Ambassador Lyra," Mack continued, "I'll work with your technical teams, but not as a strategic advisor. As a teacher, I'll show them how humans approach engineering problems, and maybe I'll learn something from them too." "This could work," Admiral Chin said slowly. "A cultural exchange program centered around practical problem solving rather than military applications." "Exactly," Mack said. "We stop treating each other like threats and start treating each other like colleagues." The meeting continued for another 3 hours, working out the details of what would eventually become the Interspecies Cooperation Initiative. But the important work was done. Instead of fearing each other, the various species would learn from each other. As the meeting broke up, Admiral Chin pulled Mack aside. "Morrison, I have to ask, when you were fighting those boarding party members, did you ever consider that you might not win?" Mack thought about it for a moment. "Honestly, no. I was too angry to think about losing. They woke me up, ruined my coffee, and tried to kidnap me. At that point, I was going to win or die trying. And that's what scares them," Chin said. "The idea that humans will fight impossible odds just because we're annoyed. Well," Mack said, grinning, "maybe we should teach them not to annoy us." As he walked back to his ship, Mack reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. 3 days ago, he'd been a simple freight hauler. Now he was apparently the most famous human in the galaxy, a symbol of his species' indomitable spirit. It was, he decided, going to make for some interesting stories when he got home. But first, he had cargo to deliver. Because no matter how famous he became, no matter how many aliens wanted to hire him or challenge him or marry him, he was still Mack Morrison, freight hauler. And he had a reputation to maintain. The galaxy, he suspected, was about to learn a lot more about human stubbornness. And maybe, just maybe, they'd learn to appreciate it. After all, freight haulers always delivered, no matter what got in their way, even if it was an entire alien armada. But that, as they say, is another story.